first of all, we put security above everything. Disable password authentication. We're in 2023 now. We don't use passwords anymore. Isolation and segregation are the key things for securing data.
Welcome to the Bare Metal Podcast.
Hi everyone, welcome to the Bare Metal Podcast. As is usual, these last episodes, I'd like to invite everyone to come to Gateway to beautiful Prague in June from the 3rd to the 5th. It's going to be a great Cosmos-focused and developer-focused conference. So I'm hoping to see you all there. Today I've got Cris with me from 01 Nodes. Hi, Cris.
Hi, guys. Nice to finally be here.
Yeah, welcome. So can you introduce 01 Node a bit and tell us about how you guys got started?
Sure. We started in the 2019 by validating testnets for Cosmos, and then participated at the genesis of all the big Cosmos chains like Cosmos, Osmosis, Juno. We were there in the start. But 01 Node is not only validating Cosmos. It validates a lot of chains. I don't know, Solana, Ethereum, Scale, Near. We have a lot of cool projects that we invested in.
That sounds pretty interesting. So can you tell us a little bit more about your background? How did you come to join them? What's your passion?
I bring around 25 years of experience. I was a network engineer I am a network engineer for 25 years now. But from time to time, I specialize in other things. I am a sysadmin for 18 years. I'm a security guy for 12 to 15 years now. I don't know. I'm an infrastructure guy for the last 6 years, combining all the things in an infrastructure, starting from network, of course, and going down to servers, storages, virtualization, anything that's in the infrastructure. And crypto was the natural step forward.
Okay, so it's. I looked over your guys' website and I was, surprised, or I was interested in the amount of detail you guys publish about the hardware types you use. So you guys use a lot of what I would call enterprise hardware, originating either from Cisco or similar providers. Did you guys start like that from the beginning, or did you build it up gradually? Buying more and more expensive stuff, because you also have tons of redundancy, right? Or at least like 1+1 redundancy. So can you talk about how you guys got there and how you designed it?
Yeah, sure. The first, when the company was started, we didn't have our own infrastructure. We had just 2 servers that were in the data room of the office, but we had sentries in different cloud providers or different rented different VPSs, and not me, of course. When I say we, I refer 01 Node. We've noticed that different cloud providers have different problems, and you have to debug a lot more to realize what's happening than having your own infrastructure. So we started buying second-hand servers at first, and then as the business grew, we came to have enterprise level servers. We start collocating them in data centers, and from then we just invested in infrastructure because we saw the benefits of running independent.
And do you guys now collocate or run in multiple DCs for redundancy as well? Okay,
yes.
So they're in Romania, but they're geographically separated somehow.
Yes, we are not exactly geographically. They're in the same town, but they're different data centers, different providers.
Different fiber different connectivity?
Yes, each data center is connected to tier one upstreams, different tier one upstreams. We have around 40 gigabits of internet accumulated. We have layer 2 interconnections between the data centers. Both data centers are tier 3 data centers. Since now we have grown and have a lot of servers and we need to expand, we are thinking of relocating one of the data centers to another town, being in a different seismic activity zone. So we have a truly disaster recovery and business continuity plan. And we are planning on opening a new, smaller data center in our office at the standards, at the enterprise standards, with N+2 redundancy for everything: power, AC, HVAC, everything.
And how do you guys, so if you have fully independent sort of backups, what's your setup to avoid double signing? Like recently there were a few double signing incidents in various places. And I guess, having redundancy that comes online, or like not having the right failover logic could be a culprit. So how did you guys design that?
First of all, we put security above everything, and we don't have the keys stored on the servers unless we need to. For protocols that don't support multi-part signing or remote signers, we put the keys on one server, run from the validator from there, keep another server running and synced, and if something happens, we ask for a remote hand. We put down the Ethernet port so the server won't get up.
So it's not able to sign anything and set it up. Just block off the network connectivity.
Yes. Okay. But for everything that is Cosmos based, since we validate a lot of Cosmos networks, we use Horcrux, and that is one of the biggest steps we took into security. And the thing that I know it's not as you're supposed to, since you are running multiple servers, but it's way easier to control them. It's
right. So you guys are using 2 of 2 signers, or is it you're running Horcrux in a 3?
We are using 2 out of 3.
2 out of 3. Okay.
Yes, each signer with its own sentry, so we don't use many-to-many. And for a typical network that we validate, we have an infrastructure like this. We have 3 signers, 3 dedicated machines, 3 sentries for signing, 2 RPCs that we use internally, and 1 public node for providing RPCs, API and gRPCs to the public. Mm-hmm. Of course, depending on the network, because we don't have this set up with public infrastructure for every network. We are planning to do that, but it's still in the grind.
So if you start validating a network, if you just got online, you roll out this whole deployment. This is like standardized, or do you start with 1 validator node, and if the delegation grows, then you upgrade? How does it work?
For all the new chains that we onboard now, we start with at least 3 signers and 3 relays. And as the validation go, we start building different services. For example, snapshot services and things like that. So we need RPCs, full nodes. So we made 2 of them for redundancy. And as the validation grows, we deploy public infrastructure.
So what kind of public infrastructure do you guys specialize? You mentioned the RPCs, and you also mentioned the state sync snapshots. Is this do you guys focus on these, or are you guys sometimes also running archive nodes or something else?
It depends. We usually don't run archive nodes unless we need them in a project, because as you probably know, with enterprise equipment, storage is very expensive.
Yeah, especially if it's virtualized, right? You guys have a network attached storage?
Yes. No, we don't have a network attached storage due to considerations
Latency?
of latency, yes, and throughput and things like this. Because when you run things like Solana, you can't run on SSD. You need the fastest NVMe possible.
Right.
Or when you have injective, when you have
1 second block times. Yeah.
Yes, you need very, very fast storage. So
makes sense. So I'm guessing from those 40 gigabits you guys have, Solana is taking most of the network budget, and then there's the rest of everybody, right?
Yeah, actually, we have up to 40 gigabits, but we don't often use up to 40 gigabits.
Solana would be what, like 5 to 10?
Let's say we have for Solana 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 servers, 6 servers now. We have 2 validators, 4 RPCs, which can be validators anytime.
Mm-hmm.
And each node for Solana takes between 300 and 800 megabits per second.
Right.
Depending
so
on...
Right. So you guys are around like between 3 and 5 gigabits for the whole thing. Right. Yeah. That's a lot of traffic. So if we dig a little bit more into the security, like sort of what steps do you take in securing your infrastructure? What are the things that are top of mind? And if you contrast that with what do you think is missing, like from Cosmos validation as a security practice?
Yeah. Where should I start?
Let's start at the beginning. Let's take it one by one.
Okay, let's take it one by one. First of all, we started taking all our nodes into private networks. All our validators are inside private networks. We don't expose them to they can't be accessed from the internet, or only if we allow certain ports, like
whitelisted some IPs and ports. Okay.
Yes. This is one, and a step that got us 90% more secure. Since it can be accessed from the internet, it's a little safer. Then,
but do you guys have any way to access them? Like, do you use bastion hosts for SSH, like a different host that you can jump in? For remote?
We don't use bastion. We use VPNs.
Okay, right. I understand. Yeah, another possibility.
We have since bastions are also Linux machines that are exploitable and are in the internet. We prefer to have VPNs that are whitelisted. They have different grades of encryption or security. Depending on which VPN you can connect to different networks. We don't have just one huge network. We have a lot of VLANs. We have the validators in one VLAN, the signers in a different VLAN that you can't access even with the normal VPN. We have to put another VPN, and things.
So
like
really,
that.
Isolation and segregation in the
Yes,
networks. Lots of segmentation.
Yes, as isolation and segregation are the key things for securing data. For example, as I told you, we use Horcrux 3 with 3 parity key, and this means that every key is in one data center. And if something happens and that VPN is broken and people got into the data center and they dig and go to the other VPN and got to the signers and they got the keys, they can't do anything with it since it's only one key.
Right. It's shared out. So that's network segmentation. That's sort of like one topic. Okay, avoid public access to the high value nodes, high value targets. Make sure you can only access them using VPN. You guys are also using different VPN. So that's sort of one part.
The other part is taking, I don't know, best practices for securing line of service. I don't know, disable password authentication. We're in 2023 now. We don't use passwords anymore. Change the default ports. Whitelist IPs that allow access to services only for whitelisted IPs. And if you need anything that needs to be accessed by anyone, just be sure you can monitor the traffic. Have an IDS or IPS solution, monitor that traffic, and give you alerts.
So just the abbreviations may not be clear to everybody. It's intrusion detection system and intrusion prevention system.
Yeah,
right? So
sorry.
Yes, which is coupled to the firewall and can tell you if suspicious activity is happening. Do you guys dig through traffic logs to sort of like do analytics on the traffic logs, or that's not part of the protection?
We did. We're not doing that anymore. We ran it for a while. There was no. Our traffic, it's very blunt. So we, thank God, we have we didn't have any attacks, but keeping all the logs and making and maintaining a CM, centralized logging system that alerts you if something happens. It's very hard, and currently we're not in that position, so we can keep it. We made it. We've made a proof of concept. It works, but the benefits that by running that are not as great as we thought.
So the logging and traffic brings me to another point that I noticed on your website, just remembered, which is the DDoS protection. So you guys say or advertise a hefty amount of DDoS capacity to capture attacks. Like, have you guys ever been attacked, or is this a part of your risk management?
Yes, we've been attacked. We also had false positives for DDoS attacks in Solana. Because,
NFT mint, yeah.
UDP 1 gigabit traffic, it's mostly considered DDoS.
Right. But it's just another day in Solana.
Yeah, but having that DDoS filtering, it's not our solution per se, but it's a solution that we pay for our upstreams, so they clean the traffic for us.
Right.
We also have systems that are excluded from the anti-DDoS filtering, but those are never production systems. So I don't know, we want to test things like this.
So you have an actual. So there's a company you buy DDoS protection from, and they're able to actively go in and start, changing rules on firewalls and just like blocking, or on routers and blocking, just sinkholding some traffic.
Yes.
To make sure it doesn't reach the systems. Okay. Yeah, that's. I don't think I've seen anybody buy DDoS protection. So you guys are the first on the that I've heard. Definitely first on the podcast. I don't think anybody else. And it's interesting that you guys were attacked. Like, do you have any idea about who was attacking and why? Which network it was?
Actually, it was a bit. I don't know, a few months. A year ago, and it was an attack on a specific range, and we had part of the range, some IPs from that range in our networks. So it was not a dedicated attack for us.
Okay, it was a general attack on some sort of on some net block, and you guys were in it on a few net blocks. Since
then. That was an eye-opener, and we started. We thought, how can we get better at this? This is our motto. We do things, and then we see how we can get better. And since then we bought our own AS number, our own IPs. We don't share them with anyone. We are fully independent now. So
So guys, so and you guys are managing the BGP routes and the
yes,
sort of the traffic. Okay,
yes,
so it's under your control. You advertise,
yes,
or
yes.
that's interesting. So that's also seems quite elaborate. Like
Yeah, it's a very good thing, but also comes along with a lot of problems because
responsibilities, right?
yeah, responsibilities, and since the internet is I don't know, a bunch of networks that are glued together with Scotch tape. You, if a provider in, I don't know, Zurich has a problem, I may not be able to access AWS on that connection. So I have to reroute traffic. And doing this means time, means a person to monitor this.
Right.
Good things we have alerts and fallbacks.
Right. So also for everybody, BGP, if you're looking for it, Border Gateway Protocol. So it's the way different networks announce routes, what they're able to route, which IP traffic can go through them. Which it does take a lot of. I guess that's where your network engineering background comes into play. Like
Yes.
I wouldn't be wanting to manage BGP routes. Like it's far too dangerous in my hands. So yeah, kudos for doing that. So if you flip this around. Let's think, like, what do you see in Cosmos networks where you'd like to see improvement? Like, what are the security risks you are noticing, and what do you think is how should they be handled?
Let's start with the most obvious one from my point of view. People that run public infrastructure on their validator. So when you validate a network and then you put that server as a public RPC, it's bad for the network, first of all. Not to mention how bad it is for you, because any public infrastructure is at risk of attacks. Attacks meaning DDoS, meaning specially crafted packets, or any bug that was mentioned, people trying to exploit it and things like this. By having access to a validator, which also in most cases have the signing key and the wallet loaded into memory, is not a very good security practice, and validators may risk losing their funds, having their validator slashed, tombstoning, or thing like this. From what I've learned in 25 years of experience in the network community, there are a lot of people out there. That do harm just because they can, and not having anything to gain from it. I spoke with some of the validators that run public infrastructure on the validator. I said, I'm a small validator. Who would want to take and take my key
attack
and
me, right?
Attack me? People attack for different reasons. Directed attack to especially that validator is I don't know, 15% of the cases. Most of the cases are script kiddies, as I like to call them. There are people who find a script, run it, and see what if they can do damage. And most of the time they do damage just because they can, and they then go public and say, "Hey, I did this. I'm the best hacker in the world."
Right. I mean, so just to add to that, public RPCs, open RPC ports on validator infrastructure is never a good idea, even if you don't get attacked, because just some RPC queries, for example, can overload, or they can load your system, because if you look into the Cosmos SDK, some of those queries require walking through a lot of database keys, so you can have like 1,000 or 2,000 accesses just because somebody asked about delegations, all the delegations of some wallet to or all the delegators to some validators. So it's possible to overload this even if you don't mean any harm. You just randomly see an RPC, like I want to use this to get my data, and you can heavily overload the hardware, right? So it's like, I totally agree. Open RPC ports a bad idea. So what else would you? And of course that goes the same for gRPC, REST ports, etc. Right? So that applies to everything we do. But
speaking of that, sorry to interrupt you. There was a validator in Juno, I think, 2 years ago, that had his validator on had his RPC ports opened, and gRPC and API, of course, and put it publicly. And somebody took the Explorer from PingPub and took the first public RPC and put it there just to query the network, and that validator went down in, I don't know, 2 minutes.
Of course, yeah. That makes sense. All the clients of PingPub opening connections to the RPC. Yeah, that's of course. So I mean, we built the Observatory. We have the same problem, right? So Observatory scans network and it discovers all the open RPC ports, and then we use those RPCs recursively to discover RPCs, right? So you just crawl the network this way, and we're taking care not to overload the RPCs because we know that some of those may be actual hardware. But of course, it's not a difficult problem to network scan to crawl and then network scan all the P2P nodes. So the RPCs and sort of open public infra. Let's package this up. That's like one problem that you see. What else would you say is like in the order of priority? Like what else do you think is happening but shouldn't
be? Networks not putting security at a high, not putting security as a must-do key point in getting delegations. Mm-hmm. So a lot of foundations take in considerations all sorts of things, but not security. From my point of view, the security of one validator it's that saying, you're as weak as your weakest link. So if you start making delegations to validators that don't take security seriously, you are just making your network less secure. So.
Right. So you think foundations should adjust their delegation programs to take more security criteria into account? Yes. I think that's so. Coincidentally, we've been working with foundations to think about foundation delegation programs, understand like how they want to allocate their funds. One complexity that arises here is how to verify, right? So some of these things you can check, of course, if valid. Well, in Cosmos, it's not so easy to ascertain who the validator node is, right? So if you discover an RPC, like it's not easy to determine that RPC is also a validator. It takes a lot of effort.
Is. You just do an RPC, a curl with /status, and you see if it has voting power.
Right. So if you have like, don't want to go into too much details, but we've seen also validators put a firewall in front or put the Nginx server in front and change the reply.
Okay.
So if you are not careful, obviously you can look into the RPC and check that it's like a validator. You might not know who the validator is. You don't know how to connect the wallet and contact the right guy. But I guess that's like, you can probably use that. You can probably look into Explorers and see if there's some sort of contact info and see if you can reach them. But if I find that, let's say you can discover this, there are a bunch of security practices which I think foundations would like to evaluate, but they have it's very difficult. Like, do the guys use ledgers, hardware wallets for their signings or not? Do they have TMKMS, like a remote signer or not? It's very hard to actually check these things, right? So you have to rely on the validator actually reporting many times the values. So it's like difficult to think about it from the foundation perspective. How do you make sure you do this fairly, you do this properly?
Yeah, I know what you're saying. I agree with you totally. Just that it's hard to because it's hard to verify if validators are actually running this. it shouldn't be a reason not to put them into the delegation as master. Okay, let them be there. Let the validator say, okay, I do this, and then it's a trust issue. For example, we won't, us 01 we will never say that we do TKMS if we don't do that, or it's
And in some ways, I mean, look, I sort of agree with what you're saying. Like, it should be in the delegation rules anyway. And then, for example, if an event happens where it's clear that it happened because somebody wasn't following the rules, then you can have, like, you can directly say, okay, then this is a violation, and like the entire delegation is going away. You have grounds for that because you've previously established clear guidelines, and now you have evidence they were not being followed, right? So, I mean, I'm not saying I totally agree with you. It should still be top of mind, even if it's hard to verify. It should still be there. And make sure like the validators understand that this is something that's being asked. So this is like a second sort of package that we're talking about, right? So first one was no public infra on your validator node. The second one was no sort of foundations should take this more seriously and add it to their delegation programs. And are there other packages? Like you mentioned, SSH ports or SSHD servers running on infra where they should be running.
It's if we put it as a package, let's say best security practice for Linux servers. If you Google that, you will find, I don't know, 15 rules that you should be aware. Custom SSH ports, no password authentication, key management, firewall for the SSH even if it's on a different non-standard port, whitelist only where only some IPs, use a bastion, use a VPN, and these are just some of the things you should do. Actually, for validators that are just starting, we 01 Node are working for a setup script, an Ansible script that will make your node as secure as possible just by running that. So we'll open
source. So it's some sort of
it.
like lockdown. You just have on a clean node, you run the script that will lock down, change some things around.
Yes, we'll change ports, we'll add firewalls, we'll help validators install. We'll also be providing a guide on how to use remote signers and things like this. And I think my best guess is that we'll publish it somewhere at the end of the summer, where at least helpful. It's our way to give back to the community. We were there also because when 01 started, we had the same problems. We didn't know what it means to run a validator with open ports, but we learned from other people's mistakes, and we want to help the community be more prepared.
Also, I think that's going to be very helpful to the community. So, but if we go back to the reason for the lockdown, like you were mentioning a lot of things, right? So the third box is securing Linux infrastructure. Are there any particular things that you've seen that you have evidence for in Cosmos networks where you're thinking, okay, this is one of the things that's most egregious out of this like Linux package?
Having SSH open with password authentication on a validator that is publicly RPC node. This is what I've seen.
The combo.
And we've talked to that validator in private. It was a Terra validator. So, but we talked to him in private and helped him to get better to this. But We were just investigating why, when our node peers to that, it gets up hashes. There was another problem that led to us. We are not publicly scanning the validators across the network.
Right, right. Okay, so I mean, thanks for building a guide and helping validators lock down their nodes. I think that's going to be quite helpful. We're going to be looking forward to that. So thank you very much. I think that's a great place to end the recording. I think this was interesting. I don't think much of the podcasts were focusing on security in this kind of depth, and I think this was very helpful. So thanks for coming on.
Thank you for having me.